I opened the door of my $3 million beach house to find my daughter Sarah and her husband standing there with forced smiles. 15 years. That's how long it had been since they'd included me in anything. Not a single Christmas dinner, birthday party, or even my grandchildren's graduations. Now here they were, designer clothes, slightly wrinkled, expensive car parked crooked in my driveway. "Mom," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "We need to talk." I smiled calmly. After 15 years, this should be interesting. The memory of Sarah's wedding still stings even after all these years. I'm Pam Morrison, and I was 55 then, a middle school English teacher who'd spent 30 years nurturing other people's children while raising my own daughter alone after my divorce. Sarah had been my everything, my reason for working double shifts, grading papers, and tutoring summers to pay for her college education. When she met Bradley Whitman III during her senior year at Boston University, I was genuinely happy for her. She glowed whenever she talked about him, and though I noticed he rarely acknowledged my presence during our few encounters, I chalked it up to shyness. How wrong I was. Their wedding took place at the Whitman estate in Martha's Vineyard. I'd saved for 2 years to buy a beautiful mother-of-the-bride dress, practiced my speech countless times, and arrived early to help with preparations. That's when Bradley's mother, Catherine Whitman, intercepted me with a smile that could freeze hell. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, emphasizing the Mrs., as if divorce was a communicable disease. "We've arranged your seating with Sarah's father's relatives." She gestured toward the back of the expansive garden where tables were set up so far from the altar, they might as well have been in a different zip code. "But I'm her mother," I said, confusion evident in my voice. Catherine's smile tightened. "Yes, well, we thought it best to keep the immediate family photos limited to current family structures. You understand?" I didn't understand. Not then. But as I sat at that distant table with cousins Sarah barely knew, watching the Whitman family monopolize every moment of my daughter's special day, comprehension dawned. I wasn't good enough, not rich enough, not connected enough, not Whitman enough. The pattern established itself quickly after that. First, it was subtle. Sarah would call to cancel our weekly lunches because Bradley had surprised her with reservations at exclusive restaurants. Then came the holiday reshuffling. Thanksgiving 2009 was the first crack in my heart. "Mom, you know how Bradley's family is about traditions," Sarah explained over the phone, her voice carrying that new tone she'd adopted since joining high society. "We'll see you for Christmas, I promise." Christmas came and went with a text message. "In Aspen with the Whitmans, miss you." By the time my first grandchild arrived, I'd learned to expect nothing. Still discovering through Facebook that Madison had been born 3 days earlier felt like a physical blow. Sarah's post showed her surrounded by the Whitman clan in a private hospital suite, everyone holding champagne glasses, while my granddaughter lay in a bassinet adorned with more flowers than most people see at their funerals. I called immediately. "Voicemail," I texted. No response. Finally, a week later, Sarah called back. "Mom, it's been absolutely crazy here. You know how it is with a newborn." I didn't know. I'd never been given the chance to know. The years blurred together in a parade of exclusions. Madison's first birthday party hosted at the country club where I wasn't a member. My grandson, Michael's christening, which I learned about from Sarah's hairdresser, who happened to cut my hair too. School plays, soccer games, piano recitals, all documented on social media for the world to see while I remained invisible. My colleagues at Jefferson Middle School would ask about my family during lunch breaks. I became an expert at deflection, showing old photos and making vague comments about everyone being so busy these days. The pity in their eyes when they eventually stopped asking was almost worse than the questions. I tried maintaining contact for 5 long years. Birthday cards returned unopened, phone calls unanswered, emails that disappeared into the digital void. The day I finally stopped trying was Michael's 5th birthday. I'd driven 2 hours to their gated community, a carefully wrapped present on my passenger seat, only to be turned away by security. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the guard said, checking his list. "You're not on the approved visitors list." I sat in a nearby parking lot for an hour watching through the fence as bouncy houses were inflated and luxury cars delivered perfectly dressed children to a party I'd never be part of. That night, I went home and did something I'd never done before. I stopped at a gas station and bought a lottery ticket. Call it fate, divine intervention, or sheer dumb luck, but that rainy Tuesday in March changed everything. I'd been grocery shopping, counting coupons, and calculating whether I could afford the brand name cereal for once. The lottery ticket was an afterthought purchased with the last $2 in my wallet. I scratched it off in my car, rain pattering against the windshield. The numbers blurred, and I had to read them 3 times before my brain accepted what my eyes were seeing. $45 million after taxes. I sat there for 20 minutes, engine running heat, fogging up the windows, waiting to wake up from this impossible dream. My first instinct was to call Sarah. My finger hovered over her contact for a full minute before reality crashed back. She hadn't answered my calls in 3 years. Why would she start now? Instead, I drove home, locked the ticket in my fireproof safe, and made a cup of tea. Then I made a decision that would define the next chapter of my life. I would tell no one. Not even Helen, my younger sister who lived in Portland and called monthly to complain about her own problems while rarely asking about mine. Especially not Helen, who had a habit of gossiping and always seemed to need a loan she never quite managed to repay. The lottery commission required publicity, but my lawyer, a sharp woman named Janet Crawford, whom I hired with my first chunk of winnings, found a loophole. I could claim the prize through an LLC maintaining my privacy. The Morrison Trust was born, and Pam Morrison, the struggling teacher, remained unchanged in everyone's eyes. 3 months after my windfall, I ran into Dorothy Chen at a coffee shop downtown. Dorothy had been Bradley's cousin's wife, someone I'd met briefly at the wedding. We exchanged pleasantries, and then she said something that stopped my heart. "I was just telling someone about Sarah the other day," Dorothy said, stirring her latte. "Such a devoted daughter, the way she cared for you before you passed." "I'm sorry." The words came out strangled. Dorothy's face went pale. "Oh my God. But Sarah said..." At the charity luncheon last month, she gave this whole speech about losing her mother and how it motivated her to work with orphans. The coffee shop spun around me. My daughter hadn't just excluded me from her life, she'd killed me off entirely. I'd become a convenient sob story, a ticket to sympathy and social capital in her circles. The betrayal cut deeper than 15 years of silence ever could. "Please don't say anything." I managed my teacher's instinct to avoid confrontation kicking in. There must be some misunderstanding. Dorothy nodded, clearly desperate to escape this awkward encounter, and hurried away. I sat there until my coffee grew cold, processing this new information. Sarah had erased me so completely that I'd become more useful to her dead than alive. That night, I made a list. Not of grievances or revenge plots, but of dreams I'd deferred while waiting for my daughter to remember I existed. Travel education, a home by the ocean. Time to write the novel I'd outlined 20 years ago. If Sarah wanted me dead, then perhaps it was time for Pam Morrison, the forgotten mother, to disappear and for someone new to be born. The transformation would take time, but for the first time in 15 years, I had something more valuable than money. I had freedom from false hope. The first person to see the real me wasn't family, but Marcus Thompson, the financial advisor Janet recommended. Marcus was nothing like the stuffy bankers I'd imagined. Early 40s with kind eyes and an easy laugh, he treated me like a CEO instead of a confused teacher who'd stumbled into wealth. "Mrs. Morrison," he said during our first meeting, spreading investment portfolios across his mahogany desk, "what do you want your money to do? Not what others expect, but what do you want?" Nobody had asked me what I wanted in so long that I actually teared up. "I want to matter," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. "I want to build something that can't be erased." Marcus smiled. "Then let's build an empire." My teacher's house sold quickly, and I moved into a furnished rental near the beach while searching for my dream home. The freedom of not checking my phone for Sarah's calls was intoxicating. I enrolled in classes I'd always wondered about: real estate investment, digital marketing, even a cooking course at the Culinary Institute, where I learned to make perfect soufflés. The bookstore came first. Chapters was a failing shop downtown, its elderly owner ready to retire, but heartbroken at the thought of closing after 40 years. I bought it quietly, keeping Mr. Henderson on as a consultant while I learned the business. Together, we transformed it from a dusty relic into a thriving community hub. We added a coffee bar, created reading nooks with plush chairs, and started hosting author events that drew crowds from 3 counties. "You've got a gift," Mr. Henderson told me 6 months later as we watched a packed poetry reading. "This place has more life than it's had in decades." I glowed under the praise. After years of being invisible, I was creating something people valued. The bookstore's success led to other opportunities. 2 rental properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods, purchased below market value and renovated with care. The monthly income they generated gave me even more freedom to explore who I could become. The scholarship fund was born from pure spite initially. I created the Morrison Excellence Award for students whose parents were teachers, a $10,000 annual gift that would help kids like Sarah should have been grateful for their parents' sacrifices. The first recipient, a brilliant girl named Amy, heading to MIT, hugged me so tight at the award ceremony that I finally understood what I'd been missing. Finding the beach house took 8 months of searching. I knew it the moment I walked through the door. 5 bedrooms each with ocean views, a kitchen designed for someone who'd finally learned to cook beyond casseroles, and a primary suite that made me feel like royalty. The private beach access sealed the deal. The renovations took another 6 months. I worked closely with designers, choosing every fixture and finish. The security system was extensive, perhaps excessive, but something about Sarah's calculated elimination of me had left me cautious. Cameras covered every angle, all feeds backing up to the cloud. What had started as paranoia would prove prescient. My new social circle formed organically. The book club began at the store, successful women who appreciated literature and wine in equal measure. There was Linda, a retired surgeon who traveled the world. Margaret, who'd built a chain of boutique hotels from nothing. Susan, whose tech startup had made her wealthy enough to pursue photography full-time. "You're like a butterfly," Linda told me one evening as we sat on my new deck watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. "Emerging from a cocoon we didn't even know you were in." Arthur entered my life at a charity auction for the local library. 71 years old, silver-haired, with the posture of someone who'd spent decades commanding courtrooms, he bid against me for a first-edition Hemingway. He won, then promptly gifted it to me over dinner. "A beautiful book for a beautiful woman," he said without a trace of corniness. Arthur had been a federal judge, widowed 5 years with grown children who lived across the country but called regularly. He was everything Bradley wasn't: respectful, genuinely interested in my thoughts, and completely unimpressed by social hierarchies. "Tell me about your family," he asked on our 3rd date. "I have a daughter," I said carefully. "We're estranged." He reached across the table and took my hand. Her loss. As my new life flourished, I found myself thinking less about Sarah and more about the grandmother I could have been. The beach house had rooms perfect for grandchildren, a game room that remained pristine, and a pool that no young voices had blessed with laughter. Sometimes the waste of it all would hit me fresh, but then Amy would call from MIT to share her grades, or one of my other scholarship recipients would send updates, and I'd remember that family could be chosen. The charity gala where everything shifted was for the Children's Hospital. I almost didn't go, but Linda insisted, pointing out that my donations deserved recognition, even if I preferred anonymity. I wore a new gown, midnight blue, that complemented the pearl necklace Arthur had given me for my 69th birthday. The ballroom buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. I was chatting with the hospital's director when a familiar voice made me freeze. Sarah stood 20 feet away, and she looked nothing like the polished society wife I'd stalked on social media. Her dress, clearly designer, bore the telltale signs of age and wear. The wine stain near the hem had been treated, but not professionally. Her jewelry caught the light wrong, the way good fakes do when trying too hard. But it was the argument with Bradley that held my attention. They stood near the coat check voices, low but body language screaming. I drifted closer, pretending to admire an auction item. You said the forensic accountant wouldn't find everything, Sarah hissed. Bradley's face, once handsome in that privileged way, now looked haggard. How was I supposed to know Dad would hire the best in Boston? We're going to lose everything. The house is already in foreclosure proceedings. Keep your voice down, he snapped, scanning the room. His eyes passed right over me. No recognition flickering. We'll figure something out. We always do. No, you always promise and I always suffer. The kids are asking questions. Madison knows something's wrong. I slipped away before they could spot me, my mind racing. The Whitman fortune, that impenetrable wall that had kept me out of my daughter's life, was crumbling. Part of me felt vindication, but mostly, I felt curious. What would Sarah do when the only currency she'd valued became worthless? Arthur found me on the terrace staring at the ocean. You look like you've seen a ghost. In a way, I said, leaning into his warmth. My past just collided with my present. He didn't push one of the many things I loved about him. We left early and I spent the drive home thinking about karma and second chances. Sarah had chosen the Whitmans over me because of their money. Now that money was gone. The question was, what would she choose next? Back home, I poured a glass of wine and sat in my library surrounded by first editions and success I'd built without anyone's approval. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah had killed me off for sympathy points while I'd resurrected myself into someone she'd never recognize. The teacher who'd saved pennies for her education had become wealthier than the family she'd traded me for. But wealth, I'd learned, was about more than money. It was about peace, purpose, and people who valued you for yourself. As I heard Arthur moving around the kitchen making us a late-night snack, I realized I had everything Sarah had thrown away. The next move would be hers, but I had a feeling it would come soon. Desperate people do desperate things, and from what I'd overheard, Sarah and Bradley were drowning. The question was whether they'd try to pull me down with them or finally learn to swim on their own. The private investigator I hired came recommended by Arthur, who'd used him during his days on the bench for background checks. Robert Lawson was unremarkable in appearance, which he claimed was his greatest asset. Within 2 weeks, he'd compiled a dossier on the Whitman family's spectacular fall that read like a Greek tragedy. Bradley's cocaine addiction had started 5 years ago, according to the timeline Robert constructed. What began as recreational use at country club parties had spiraled into a $5,000 a week habit. The gambling came next, high-stakes poker games in back rooms of exclusive clubs where trust fund babies bet their futures on cards. He owes approximately $2.3 million to various creditors, Robert explained, sliding documents across my dining room table. Some legitimate, some decidedly not. The embezzlement from his father's pharmaceutical company was almost amateur in its execution. Bradley had created ghost employees, funneled money through fake consulting contracts, and somehow believed his father's accountants wouldn't notice millions disappearing. When Whitman Sr. discovered the theft, he didn't press charges protecting the family name, but he cut Bradley off completely. There's more, Robert said, pulling out photos that showed Sarah at various ATMs. Your daughter has been maintaining their lifestyle through credit card fraud, opening cards in family members' names, including her children's social security numbers. My stomach turned. She's using her own children. 23 cards that I've found so far. The debt exceeds $800,000. I thought of Madison and Michael, innocent victims of their parents' greed. How long before their credit was destroyed before they even had a chance to build lives of their own? The next revelation came from an unexpected source. My landscaper mentioned that someone had been asking questions about me around town, specifically about my daily routines and whether I lived alone. It didn't take Robert long to trace the inquiries back to a private investigator named Dale Murphy, whose client list included one Sarah Whitman. I had Robert's associate follow Murphy, leading to a goldmine of information. Sarah had been trying to locate me for 3 months, growing increasingly frantic as her financial situation deteriorated. She'd started at Jefferson Middle School, where my former colleagues honestly told her they hadn't seen me since retirement. The lack of forwarding address had frustrated her to the point of hiring professional help. The security footage from my own cameras proved most illuminating. 2 weeks before their official visit, Sarah and Bradley had come to my house while I was at a library board meeting. They'd sat in their car for an hour, Bradley taking photos with a telephoto lens while Sarah made notes on a legal pad. Their conversation, picked up by my driveway camera's audio, was chilling in its calculation. "The house alone has to be worth $3 million, Bradley said, zooming in on my windows. "Look at those fixtures. That's custom work." "How does a teacher afford this?" Sarah's voice carried genuine bewilderment. She must have inherited from someone. "Does it matter she's old, alone, and clearly not competent if she's spending like this? My lawyer says elder abuse cases are slam dunks if we can establish a pattern of unusual spending." "We need to get inside," Sarah said. "If we can document confusion, maybe get her to sign something." "One step at a time. First, we establish contact. You cry, I'll be supportive. We'll work the reconciliation angle until we can assess her mental state." I watched this footage in my home office, Linda beside me for moral support. Her surgeon's hands, usually so steady, trembled with rage. "The calculating little witch," she spat. "Planning to have you declared incompetent." But worse was coming. Through Robert's investigation, I learned about Helen's involvement. My sister, who I'd helped quietly for years through anonymous gifts, had been meeting with Sarah for 6 weeks. Their conversations, recorded by Sarah herself as insurance, revealed a conspiracy that broke what was left of my heart. "She was always secretive," Helen's voice crackled through Robert's laptop speakers. "Even as a child, hoarding things, not trusting anyone. I wouldn't be surprised if she's showing signs of dementia now." "We just need enough for a conservatorship," Sarah replied. "Once we have control of her assets, we can ensure she's properly cared for. And I'll be compensated for my testimony." Of course, family takes care of family. The irony of that statement from a daughter who'd declared me dead wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Robert had done additional digging into their legal preparations. Bradley had met with 3 different lawyers specializing in elder law, specifically asking about conservatorships and inheritance challenges. One lawyer, ethical enough to be concerned, had actually called Adult Protective Services to report the suspicious inquiries, but without a name or specific target, nothing had come of it. Their financial desperation painted an even clearer picture. Foreclosure notices on their 6-bedroom colonial in Westchester. Private school tuition for Madison and Michael in arrears by 6 months. Their country club membership suspended for non-payment. Even their housekeeper had quit after paychecks bounced repeatedly. The twist that changed everything came from Michael himself. My 16-year-old grandson reached out through, of all things, a gaming platform. His username was Mike Seeks Grandma, and his message was simple: "I know you're my grandmother. We need to talk." Against Arthur's advice, but following my heart, I responded. Over the next month, through carefully encrypted messages that showed technical sophistication beyond his years, Michael revealed the extent of his parents' neglect and their plans. "They think I'm stupid because I'm quiet," he wrote, "but I hear everything. Mom practices her reconciliation speech in the mirror every morning. Dad's been researching your assets through some sketchy private investigator." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked during one of our text conversations. "Because they stole my college fund. $60,000 from Grandpa Whitman, meant for my education, gone to pay Dad's dealer. Because they're so focused on their schemes, they forgot to come to my National Honor Society induction. Because you deserved better than being erased." Michael had been documenting everything with the meticulous nature of someone who'd learned not to trust the adults in his life. Screenshots of text messages where his parents discussed their plans, audio recordings from his phone of their strategy sessions, even video of them practicing their performances. "I want out," he confided. "I've already talked to a lawyer about emancipation. I just need somewhere to go. We'll figure it out together." I promised my grandmother's heart, finally having someone to protect. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Robert discovered Bradley's connection to a disbarred lawyer named Vincent Carrillo, who specialized in what he called wealth redistribution through legal channels. Carrillo had a history of helping adult children gain control of their elderly parents' assets through questionable means. 3 of his previous clients were serving prison sentences for elder abuse, but Carrillo himself had managed to avoid prosecution. He's coaching them. Robert explained, showing me email exchanges between Bradley and Carrillo, teaching them exactly what to say, how to act, what evidence to manufacture. One email particularly stood out. Remember, tears are your weapon. Confusion is your goal. Get her to invite you in, then document everything. Old people always have something wrong. Medication bottles, unpaid bills, spoiled food. Spin it right and you've got incompetence. Once you're in the house, you're halfway to control. I sat back in my chair, processing the full scope of their plan. This wasn't a desperate daughter seeking reconciliation. This was a calculated attack on my autonomy, my assets, and my dignity. They'd mapped out every move, prepared for every contingency, except one. I already knew everything. "What do you want to do?" Robert asked, his professional demeanor cracking to show genuine concern. I thought about it carefully. The teacher in me wanted to educate them, to somehow make them see the error of their ways. The mother in me, buried but not dead, grieved for the daughter I'd lost to greed. But the woman I'd become, forged in the fire of abandonment and strengthened by success, knew exactly what needed to happen. "We're going to let them come," I said finally, "but we're going to be ready." Over the next week, I prepared meticulously. Every valuable was documented and photographed. My lawyers drew up ironclad documents protecting my assets. Security cameras were double-checked, and new ones were added in strategic locations. I even hired an off-duty police officer to be nearby during their planned visit, Arthur's suggestion that proved prescient. Helen received special attention. Through careful investigation, I discovered I'd been unknowingly supporting her for years. The anonymous benefactor who paid her property taxes, that was me funneling money through a charity I supported. The scholarship her daughter received for nursing school, my education foundation. The lottery win that cleared her medical debt, my accountant following my instructions to help family without revealing the source. I compiled evidence of every payment, every act of kindness she'd received while plotting against me. The irony was perfect. She'd been living on my charity while scheming to steal what she thought was my fortune. But I had one more surprise for her, one that would flip the entire script. I contacted Helen directly for the first time in 2 years. "Pam," her voice was shocked. "How did you— Sarah said you were—" "Dead, yes, I heard about that. We need to talk, Helen, about your mortgage payments." "What mortgage payments?" "The ones I've been making through the Thompson Trust. You didn't think your mortgage company just forgot about you, did you?" The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then quietly, "Oh my God." "Tomorrow, 2:00 Chapters Bookstore. Come alone, and Helen, bring every recording Sarah gave you. We have a lot to discuss." The chess pieces were all in position. Sarah and Bradley thought they were playing checkers while I'd been mastering the game at a grandmaster level. Their plan was clever, but it relied on me being the weak, gullible woman they'd dismissed 15 years ago. That woman had died the day they excluded her from their lives. In her place stood someone who'd learned that the best defense against those who would dim your light is to shine so brightly they're forced to shield their eyes. The doorbell would ring soon. They would come with their practiced tears and calculated concern. What they didn't know was that every move had been anticipated, every word would be recorded, and every lie would be their last. The trap wasn't just set, it was perfect. The doorbell rang at precisely 2 in the afternoon, just as Sarah had texted they would arrive. I'd chosen my outfit carefully elegant but not ostentatious, a navy cashmere sweater set that whispered money rather than shouted it. My hair was freshly styled, my minimal jewelry authentic but understated. I wanted to look like the successful woman I'd become, not the desperate mother they expected to find. Arthur waited in my study watching the camera feeds. Linda was at the bookstore with Helen, who'd arrived as instructed, with a bag full of recordings and enough guilt to fill an ocean. My lawyer, Janet, had positioned herself at a coffee shop nearby, ready to arrive if needed. Even Michael was in position, parked down the street in his beat-up Honda, determined to witness his parents' performance. I opened the door with measured calm, letting them see me fully before speaking. Sarah's face went through a series of expressions, surprise at my appearance calculation as she processed my obvious wealth, then forced emotion as she remembered her role. "Mom," she breathed, and I watched her eyes actually well with tears on command. "Impressive. It's really you." Bradley stood slightly behind her, his once confident demeanor now radiating desperate energy. His eyes darted past me, cataloging the visible art, the marble floor, the chandelier that cost more than their canceled country club membership. "Sarah Bradley." I nodded politely as if greeting acquaintances rather than family. "This is unexpected. Can we come in?" Sarah's voice trembled. She clutched a tissue. She didn't need a prop in her carefully orchestrated play. "Please, it's been so long." I stepped aside, gesturing them into the formal living room. Not the cozy family room where Arthur and I spent our evenings, but the space I used for business meetings. Elegant but cold, with uncomfortable chairs that discouraged long visits. "Would you like some tea?" I offered, playing the gracious hostess. "That would be lovely," Sarah said, settling onto the cream sofa like she belonged there. Mom, this house is incredible." "Thank you." I poured from the service I'd already prepared Earl Grey in delicate china that belonged in a museum. "I've been fortunate in my investments." Bradley's eyes sharpened. "Investments? But you were a teacher," was being the operative word. I handed them their cups, noting how Bradley's hand trembled slightly. Withdrawal symptoms or nerves. "I retired some time ago." Sarah launched into her prepared speech, and I had to admire her commitment to the performance. Tears tracked down her cheeks as she spoke of missing her mother, of regret for lost years of wanting her children to know their grandmother. She hit every emotional note perfectly, from the voice cracks to the pauses for composing herself. "I know I haven't been the daughter you deserved." She continued, reaching for my hand. I let her take it, noting her surprise at my manicured nails, the expensive lotion that had replaced years of chalk dust. "But when I heard you were doing so well living here all alone, I knew I had to try to make things right." "When you heard," I kept my voice neutral. "How interesting. From whom?" A flicker of panic crossed her face before she recovered. "Oh, you know how small the community is. Someone mentioned seeing you at the Maritime Museum Gala." I nodded, filing away the lie. The Maritime Museum Gala had been 3 months ago, well before she'd started searching for me, according to Robert's timeline. But I played along, sipping my tea while she continued her soliloquy about family and forgiveness. "And the children?" I asked when she finally paused. "Madison must be, 15 now?" 14. Sarah corrected, then caught herself. Her own daughter was 15. She'd just failed her first test. Yes, 15. Time flies so fast." "Indeed. And Michael, he's doing wonderfully. Top of his class, headed for great things." I smiled, knowing that Michael's great things currently included planning his escape from his parents. "How lovely. You must be very proud." Bradley cleared his throat, clearly impatient with the small talk. "Mrs. Morrison, Pam, we're actually here because we're concerned about you." "Oh," I raised an eyebrow, channeling every imperious teacher look I'd ever perfected. "How thoughtful." "Living alone in such a large house at your age," he gestured around the room, "it must be overwhelming." "I'm 70, Bradley, not 90, and I have excellent help." I watched his jaw tighten at my tone. "But thank you for your concern." Sarah jumped back in tears, refreshing themselves. "We just want to help Mom. Maybe we could stay for a few days, get reacquainted. I could help you organize things, make sure everything's in order." "How generous." I set down my teacup with deliberate precision. "But I'm curious, Sarah. Why now, after 15 years of silence? Why today?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Sarah's mouth opened and closed, her practiced words failing her. Bradley shifted uncomfortably, his telltale glance toward the door, revealing his desire to flee. We... Sarah fumbled before finding her footing. I realized life is too short. When someone mentioned you'd moved here, bought this beautiful house, I thought maybe you'd be more open to reconciliation. Someone mentioned I had money, you mean? The words slipped out sharp and clear. No, that's not. Sarah's performance cracked slightly. Mom, how could you think that? I reached for the leather journal I'd placed strategically on the coffee table. Perhaps because of this. I opened it to the first page dated 15 years ago. December 25th, 2009. Christmas. No call from Sarah. Madison's first Christmas, according to Facebook. I flipped through pages, my voice steady as I read entry after entry. Birthdays, missed calls, unanswered emails ignored. Sarah's face paled with each page turn while Bradley's expression darkened with anger at their plan's derailment. You documented everything, Sarah whispered. Teachers keep good records. I closed the journal, including this interesting entry from last year. Ran into Dorothy Chen. She expressed sympathy for my death. Apparently, Sarah gave a moving speech about being an orphan at a charity luncheon. The silence was deafening. Sarah's tears had stopped, replaced by the calculating look I'd seen on the security footage. Bradley's mask had slipped entirely, revealing the desperate con artist beneath the designer suit. That was a misunderstanding, Sarah finally managed. Was it like the misunderstanding where you've opened 23 credit cards in your children's names? Bradley shot to his feet. How dare you investigate us? Sit down, Bradley. My teacher voice, the one that had controlled classrooms of hormonal teenagers, worked just as well on entitled men. He sat. I didn't investigate you. Your son told me. Michael wouldn't... Sarah's voice trailed off as she processed the implications. Wouldn't be tired of being ignored? Wouldn't be angry about his stolen college fund? Wouldn't reach out to the grandmother he's been told is dead? I pulled out my phone, showing them a photo Michael had sent of us gaming online together. He's quite skilled at Fortnite, by the way. We play every Tuesday. You've been in contact with our minor child without our permission. Bradley's attempt at legal intimidation was almost amusing. Your minor child who's filing for emancipation. That minor child. I watched the last color drain from their faces. He's documented everything you know, your neglect, your schemes, even your practices sessions for today's performance. Sarah's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled entirely. You knew we were coming. I've known for weeks. Your security specialist, Mr. Murphy, is quite noticeable when he's following someone. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the same car appearing everywhere I went? This is entrapment, Bradley sputtered. This is consequences. I stood smoothing my skirt. You came here planning to have me declared incompetent. You consulted with Vincent Carrillo about stealing my assets. You prepared Helen to testify against me. What you didn't know is that Helen has been living on my charity for years. Every mortgage payment, every medical bill, every lucky windfall came from my accounts. That's impossible, Sarah breathed. Is it just like it's impossible that a teacher could make smart investments, that a woman you discarded could thrive without you? I moved to the window, looking out at the ocean that had become my solace. You killed me off for sympathy, Sarah. Did you ever once consider that I might have actually died? That you'd thrown away your last chance to know your mother? We need money. The words exploded from Bradley like a confession. We're losing everything. So you thought you'd take mine. I turned back to them, my calm never wavering. The house you're photographing, I'm donating it. The money you're scheming for, most of it goes to charity. The inheritance you're counting on. A trust with so many conditions you'll be in nursing homes before you see a penny. Sarah was crying again, but these tears were real. The weight of her choices, the magnitude of her miscalculation, had finally hit home. Mom, please. We made mistakes, but we're family. No. The word came out firm, but not cruel. Family shows up for more than just paychecks. Family doesn't declare you dead for attention. Family doesn't plot to steal your autonomy along with your assets. Bradley grabbed Sarah's arm. We're leaving. This was a waste of time. Yes, you are leaving. But not before you hear this. I pulled out a manila envelope thick with documents. Restraining orders. If either of you come within 500 feet of me, my properties, or my businesses, you'll be arrested. Your lawyer, Mr. Carrillo, is already under investigation thanks to our recorded conversations. Those credit cards in your children's names reported to the authorities. You're destroying us, Sarah whispered. No, darling, you destroyed yourselves. I'm just refusing to be collateral damage. As they stood to leave Face's shells of their former selves, I offered one olive branch. Not for them, but for the daughter I'd once loved. Michael's emancipation hearing is next month. I'll be testifying on his behalf and providing him a home. Madison is welcome too when she's ready. Your children deserve better than parents who see them as credit scores to exploit. Sarah turned at the door, mascara streaming down her cheeks. For just a moment, I saw the little girl who used to curl up in my lap for bedtime stories. I loved you once, she said. I know, I replied. I loved you too, but love without respect is just manipulation, and I'm too old for games. They left in a Mercedes that would probably be repossessed within the week. I stood in my doorway watching them drive away, feeling neither triumph nor regret, just peace. Arthur emerged from the study, wrapping his arms around me. You were magnificent. I was prepared. I leaned into his warmth. There's a difference. Michael's text came minutes later. They looked rough leaving. You okay, Grandma? I'm perfect, I typed back. Ready for that driving lesson tomorrow. Can't wait, love you. 3 words Sarah hadn't said in 15 years. 3 words that meant everything coming from someone who chose family rather than being born into it. As I closed the door on the past, I opened my heart to the future. One grandchild at a time. The week following their disastrous visit became a masterclass in desperation. True to form, Sarah and Bradley couldn't accept defeat. Instead, they doubled down, not realizing that every move they made was being documented, analyzed, and would ultimately seal their fate. I agreed to their request for daily visits, but with conditions. They could come between 2 and 4 in the afternoon, always in the formal living room, and always with my housekeeper present. Maria, a sharp-eyed woman who'd raised 6 children and brooked no nonsense, proved an excellent witness to their increasingly frantic behavior. Day 1, they arrived with flowers and practiced smiles. Sarah complimented everything from the crown molding to the imported marble, while Bradley casually photographed family moments that happened to include expensive artwork in the background. I served tea in the good china and spoke pleasantly about the weather, my book club, anything except finances or family history. Mom. Sarah ventured during a lull. I noticed you have several empty bedrooms. It seems like such a waste for one person. Oh, they're not empty, I replied cheerfully. One's being converted to a library, another's for when Michael stays over, and the third is Arthur's when he doesn't feel like driving home. The mention of Arthur's overnight stays sent Bradley into a coughing fit. The possibility of my remarrying clearly hadn't been in their calculations. Day 2 brought more aggressive tactics. Bradley asked to use the bathroom and got lost finding it despite the powder room being clearly visible from the living room. Maria found him trying doorknobs upstairs and escorted him back with the firm hand of someone who'd caught many wayward children. Such a big house, he said, not even embarrassed. Easy to get confused. Yes, that's why I have a security system that tracks all movement, I replied smoothly. Every door, every window, every footstep. Technology is wonderful these days. Their frustration grew with each visit. By day 3, Sarah attempted tears again, lamenting how distant I seemed, how formal our interactions were compared to her dreams of reconciliation. I just want my mom back. She sobbed into tissues that remained suspiciously dry. I'm right here, I said, patting her shoulder with the same detachment I'd use on a stranger. Though I must say, it's interesting you want back something you threw away so thoroughly. Day 4 revealed their next strategy when they arrived with a folder of family photos they'd found while cleaning out their house. The pictures were carefully curated Sarah as a baby, her high school graduation images designed to provoke maternal nostalgia. What they didn't know was that I had boxes of photos in my study pictures that told the whole story, not just the chapters they wanted me to remember. "Look how happy we were," Sarah said, pointing to a photo of her college graduation where I stood beaming beside her, "before everything got so complicated." "Yes, that was 5 months before you told me the Whitmans didn't want outsiders at your engagement party," I observed. "Happiness does tend to get complicated when you're deemed not good enough for your daughter's new life." The folder snapped shut. By the end of the week, their desperation was palpable. Bradley's Mercedes had been replaced with a rental car. Sarah's designer handbag showed where she couldn't quite hide. They looked haggard, the stress of maintaining their facade, while their world crumbled, taking its visible toll. But the most illuminating moments came from what they didn't know I could hear. My security system, installed by the best in the business, included audio sensors in my garden. Their car conversations before and after each visit provided a running commentary on their schemes. "She's not budging," Bradley hissed after day 5's visit. "We need to escalate." "To what?" Sarah shot back. "She's got cameras everywhere. That housekeeper hovers like a guard dog, and she keeps mentioning that judge boyfriend. There has to be something. Medical issues, confusion, something we can document." "She's sharper than when I was in high school. Did you see how she caught my mistake about Madison's recital dates? She knows things she shouldn't know." Then we go to Plan C. "What Plan C? We don't have a Plan C." "We will. I'm meeting with Carrillo tonight." That meeting never happened. Vincent Carrillo was arrested that evening on charges of fraud conspiracy and elder abuse, related to 3 other cases. The timing wasn't coincidental. Arthur still had connections in law enforcement, and my evidence had accelerated an ongoing investigation. Bradley discovered this when he arrived at Carrillo's office to find it sealed with crime scene tape. The real entertainment came from the family dinner I hosted on day 6. I invited them for a formal meal complete with my lawyer, Janet, and my financial advisor, Marcus, as additional guests. Arthur presided at the head of the table. Like the judge, he'd been his presence a reminder of the legal weight behind my defenses. "I thought we should all be transparent about our situations," I announced over the soup course. "After all, families shouldn't have secrets." Janet smiled, her shark-like expression making Bradley squirm. "An excellent principle. Transparency prevents misunderstandings, especially regarding financial matters and estate planning." "Speaking of which," Marcus added, cutting his bread with surgical precision, "I've been advising Pam on her charitable giving. The Morrison Foundation will be doing wonderful work for generations." "Charitable giving," Sarah's voice pitched high. "But what about family?" "Oh, family is provided for," I assured her. "Michael's education trust is fully funded, as is Madison's. They'll want for nothing as long as they maintain certain standards of behavior and grades." "That's generous," Bradley managed through gritted teeth. "Conditional," Arthur corrected. "The trusts have strict oversight. Any attempt to access funds for non-educational purposes, any criminal activity, any coercion of the beneficiaries and the funds revert to charity." Criminal activity. Sarah's fake confusion fooled no one. "Why would that be a concern?" "One can never be too careful," Janet said smoothly, "especially with reports of identity theft, credit fraud, that sort of thing. Terrible what some parents do to their children's financial futures." The main course arrived, perfectly prepared salmon that neither Sarah nor Bradley could seem to swallow. Their performance was unraveling, and everyone at the table knew it. "Now," I said, setting down my fork, "let's discuss this reconciliation you're so eager for. I'm willing to have a relationship with you, Sarah, but it comes with conditions." Hope flickered in her eyes, the desperate kind that grasps at straws. "Anything, Mom. Whatever you need." "Therapy. Both of you. Intensive therapy to address your issues with money manipulation and parental responsibility. Full financial disclosure to a court-appointed accountant. Restitution for the credit fraud against your children. And absolutely no requests for money loans, investments, or bailouts for 5 years. 5 years, Bradley exploded. "We'll be bankrupt in 5 months. Then you'll learn to live within your means, Arthur said calmly. Many people do it quite successfully. This is ridiculous. Sarah snapped her mask, finally dropping completely. You're sitting on millions while your own daughter suffers. I'm sitting on money I earned after you declared me dead, I corrected. Money that came to someone who didn't exist in your world. Why should a ghost's fortune matter to you? The rest of the dinner proceeded in icy silence. They left without dessert, without goodbyes, and without any remaining pretense of loving reconciliation. But they weren't done yet. The truly spectacular finale was yet to come. Michael texted me that night. They're in full meltdown mode. Dad's throwing things. Mom's on the phone with Aunt Helen plotting something about grandparents' rights. Let them plot, I texted back. How's your emancipation paperwork coming? Filed yesterday. Attorney says it's solid. Can't wait to be free. Soon, sweetheart, very soon. Helen's arrival the next day wasn't unexpected. She came during the afternoon visit time, flanked by Sarah and Bradley like reluctant bodyguards. But Helen's expression told a different story than they expected. Pam, she said, pushing past them to hug me. I'm so sorry, so sorry. Sarah's jaw dropped as Helen turned to her. I told you I wouldn't do it. I won't lie about my sister for money, especially money she's been secretly giving me for years. You were supposed to stay in the car, Bradley snarled. And you were supposed to be decent human beings, Helen shot back. Pam's been paying my bills, funding my daughter's education, keeping me afloat, while I badmouthed her to anyone who'd listen. I'm done being ungrateful, and I'm done with both of you. The beauty of it was that Helen brought receipts, literally. Every communication with Sarah, every planned lie, every promise of payment for false testimony. She'd recorded their entire conspiracy and turned it all over to me that day in the bookstore. You set us up, Sarah whispered, the full scope of her defeat finally dawning. No, sweetheart, I said gently. You set yourselves up. I just made sure there would be consequences. They left for the last time that day, Helen staying behind to finally have the honest conversation we'd needed for years. As Sarah's rental car disappeared down my driveway, I felt the complex emotions of a mother's heart grief for what could have been relief at what was prevented and hope for what might still come. Do you think she'll ever change? Helen asked, holding the teacup with hands that shook slightly. Everyone can change. I said, though, I wondered if I believed it. But they have to want it more than they want the easy path. Outside, storm clouds gathered over the ocean, but inside my home, surrounded by people who chose truth over greed, the sunshine of integrity warmed every corner. The poker game was over. I'd played every hand perfectly, and the pot I'd won was worth more than money. It was freedom, family on my terms, and the absolute certainty that I'd never be anyone's victim again. The best part, this was still just the beginning. The real show was about to start. My 70th birthday party was Arthur's idea, though I'd enhanced it considerably. What began as an intimate gathering became a strategic masterpiece, hosted at the Ocean View Country Club, where Sarah and Bradley's membership had recently been revoked. 300 guests, including business leaders, charity directors, local politicians, and carefully selected members of the press. You sure you want to do this? Arthur asked as we reviewed the final preparations. Public exposure can be brutal. They chose public, I reminded him. Sarah announced my death at a charity luncheon. Bradley networked his schemes at country club dinners. They weaponized society against me. Now society gets to witness the truth. The invitation list was deliberately crafted. Every person Sarah had told about my death, every family that had witnessed the Whitman snubs, every charity where she'd performed her orphan act. I also invited the students my foundation had supported, the small business owners I'd helped launch the community that had embraced me when my blood family hadn't. Michael helped with the technology, setting up screens throughout the ballroom for what guests thought would be a touching video tribute. He'd grown 3 inches in the 2 months since that doorstep confrontation, thriving in my guest room, while his emancipation moved through the courts. You're sure your parents will come? I asked him as we tested the audio system. They'll come, he said with a wisdom too heavy for 16. Dad can't resist free food and networking, and Mom won't let him come alone. They've been telling everyone they're reconciling with you. Indeed, the revisionist history Sarah and Bradley had been spreading was almost impressive. According to their version, they'd been searching for me for years, desperate to heal the family rift I had apparently created. My wealth was a recent surprise, and their only concern was my well-being in old age. Several acquaintances had already called to congratulate me on reuniting with my devoted daughter. The night of the party, I wore an elegant burgundy gown that Arthur had helped select my grandmother's pearl necklace, gleaming at my throat. The necklace Sarah had once called outdated now looked like the heirloom it was especially paired with the confidence of a woman who'd earned her place in the world. Guests arrived in waves, the receiving line, giving me a chance to thank each person who'd become part of my chosen family. Linda and my book club ladies commanded a table near the stage. Marcus and his wife chatted with other financial professionals I'd met through investments. Even Mr. Henderson from the bookstore attended, pride shining in his eyes at what his former employee had become. Sarah and Bradley arrived fashionably late, making an entrance in what were clearly rented formal wear. Sarah had managed to style her hair elegantly, but I noticed the telltale signs of home color and discount makeup. Bradley's tuxedo fit well enough, though the shoes were the same scuffed dress shoes he'd worn to my house. Mom. Sarah's voice carried across the ballroom as she rushed to embrace me performing for the crowd. Happy birthday. You look absolutely radiant. Sarah. Bradley. I accepted her air kisses with the same warmth I'd show a casual acquaintance. So glad you could make it. Table 12 is yours. I'd placed them strategically, not so far back as to seem punitive, but surrounded by people who knew their history. Dorothy Chen, who'd accidentally revealed my death, sat at the next table. 3 charity directors Sarah had performed her orphan story for were within earshot. The placement was deliberate psychological warfare. The evening progressed beautifully. Dinner was served, toasts were made, and stories were shared about the impact of the Morrison Foundation. Amy, my first scholarship recipient, now completing her doctorate at MIT, gave a speech that brought tears to genuine eyes. Mrs. Morrison didn't just give me money for school. Amy said, her voice strong and clear. She gave me belief in my worth. She showed up for every milestone, every achievement, every struggle. That's what real family does. I caught Sarah's flinch at the words, saw Bradley's jaw tighten as student after student shared similar stories. These young people I'd supported for 5 years had received more attention and care than I'd given my own grandchildren, because their parents had made any other relationship impossible. Then came time for the video tribute. Michael took the stage handsome in his first real suit, confidence replacing the shadows that had lived in his eyes. My grandmother asked me to put together a video celebrating family, he began, but I realized that family isn't just about blood, it's about choices. So this video celebrates both, the family we're born with and the family we choose. The lights dimmed and the screens came alive. The opening was sweet. Old photos of me with baby Sarah teaching Moment's birthday parties from simpler times. The audience smiled. Sarah relaxed and Bradley reached for his champagne. Then the tone shifted. But sometimes, Michael's recorded narration continued. Family makes choices that change everything. The screen showed a Facebook post Sarah at a charity luncheon tearfully discussing her orphan status. The timestamp clearly showed it was posted while I was very much alive, teaching 3 miles away from the event. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Sarah's face went white as her own voice filled the room from a recorded conversation. She's been dead to me for years. Might as well make it official and get some sympathy donations for the Children's Fund. The video continued relentlessly. Security footage of their scouting my home, audio of their planning sessions, Bradley's meetings with the disbarred lawyer, Sarah practicing her reconciliation performance in their kitchen coaching, Bradley on his concerned son-in-law act. The thing about security cameras, Michael's narration explained, is that they don't lie. They just record the truth. The most damning evidence came next. Financial documents showing the credit cards in Madison and Michael's names, the stolen college funds, the fraud that sacrificed children's futures for their parents' greed. Bradley's voice clear and unremorseful. The kids won't need credit until they're adults. We'll have Pam's money by then and can fix everything. The room had gone completely silent except for the videos playing. Sarah sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. Real ones this time. Bradley had loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead as his crimes were laid bare for everyone who mattered in their social circle. But the finale belonged to Michael live on stage. "I'm 16 years old," he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "And I've been managing my family's emotional bankruptcy longer than I can remember. But last month, I met my grandmother for real, not the villain my parents painted, but a woman who survived abandonment and built something beautiful from the ashes." He looked directly at his parents. "Mom, Dad, you didn't just steal my college fund. You stole my chance at a normal family, but Grandma Pam gave it back. She showed me that love isn't about manipulation or money. It's about showing up." The screens displayed one final image: legal documents for Michael's emancipation, granted just days before, with my address listed as his new residence. "So happy birthday, Grandma," Michael concluded. "Thank you for choosing me when my parents couldn't see past their greed. Thank you for being the family I needed." The applause started slowly, then built to thunder. But it wasn't celebration. It was vindication support and societal judgment all rolled into one. Sarah tried to stand to flee, but found herself surrounded by people she'd lied to, charities she'd defrauded emotionally, if not financially. "How could you?" Dorothy Chen asked, her voice carrying in the moment of quiet after the applause. "I grieved for you, Sarah. I actually grieved for your loss." "It wasn't, I didn't mean," Sarah's voice failed her. That's when law enforcement arrived. Not dramatically. Arthur had ensured discretion, but purposefully. Two detectives approached Bradley, credentials displayed professionally. "Bradley Whitman, we need you to come with us regarding fraudulent credit applications and identity theft of minors." "This is a setup," Bradley shouted, all pretense of charm evaporating. "She entrapped us. This whole thing is entrapment." "No," Detective Williams said calmly. "This is consequence. Your son filed the complaint, not Mrs. Morrison." As they escorted Bradley out, he turned to Sarah with pure venom. "This is your fault. Your mother. Your plan. Your failure." Sarah stood alone in a sea of former friends, mascara stained and shaking. For a moment, our eyes met across the room, and I saw my daughter. Not the society climber or the schemer, but the lost woman who'd traded her integrity for an illusion of status. I walked to her through the parting crowd, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The room held its breath as I reached my daughter, this stranger who'd shared my womb, but not my values. "I loved you more than life itself," I said quietly, my voice carrying in the silence. "I would have given you everything, shared any success, celebrated every joy. All you had to do was show up. Just show up, Sarah." "I'm sorry," she whispered, and for the first time in 15 years, I believed she might mean it. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I replied, "but sorry doesn't erase the damage or rebuild the trust. You have a long road ahead. Legal troubles, financial ruin, social exile. But you also have something else." What hope flickered in her eyes? "A chance to become someone your children can respect. Michael forgave me for missing 15 years. Maybe someday he'll forgive you too, but you'll have to earn it one honest day at a time." Security quietly escorted her out, not arrested, but no longer welcome. The party resumed subdued, but somehow warmer, as if a poison had been lanced from a wound. People approached me throughout the night, sharing their own stories of family betrayal and survival, creating connections from common pain, transformed into purpose. Helen found me on the terrace, later the ocean breeze cooling the emotions of the evening. "You destroyed her," she said, but without accusation, "in front of everyone who mattered to her." "No," I corrected. "She destroyed herself. I just made sure there were witnesses." "What happens now?" I thought about it watching the moonlight dance on the waves. "Now we heal. Michael and Madison have a home with me. Sarah has reality to face without filters or facades, and I have the family I chose instead of the one that chose to forget me. The party wound down, but the reverberations would last for years. By morning, the story had spread through 3 counties, a cautionary tale of greed and consequences that would be whispered at charity luncheons and country club dinners for decades. But in my home that night, Michael helped me out of my heels while Arthur made hot chocolate, and Helen curled up on my couch like the sister I'd always wanted her to be. Madison had called asking if the offer of a room extended to her, ready to leave the chaos of her parents' collapse. This was victory, but not the kind I'd imagined during those lonely years. It wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about truth, finally exposed, like silver polished free of tarnish. It was about choosing who deserved space in my life and having the strength to enforce those boundaries. The trap had sprung perfectly, but what it caught wasn't just criminals or con artists. It caught the truth, held it up to the light, and freed us all from the weight of pretense. In the end, that's what made the evening truly memorable. Not the fall of those who'd wronged me, but the rise of those who'd chosen right. The ocean sang its eternal song outside my windows, and I fell asleep to its rhythm, finally and completely at peace. 5 years have passed since that explosive birthday party, and I'm writing this from my lanai in Maui, watching the sun paint the Pacific in shades of gold and amber. Arthur sits beside me, reading legal briefs, even in retirement. Some habits die hard. At 75, I've learned that the best revenge truly is a life well lived, but the greatest wisdom lies in transforming that revenge into something far more powerful: redemption. The legal fallout from that night was swift and severe. Bradley received a 5-year sentence for fraud and identity theft, though he'll be eligible for parole in 3. The last I heard, he was teaching literacy classes to other inmates, finally using that expensive education for something worthwhile. Prison, it seems, stripped away the entitlement that privilege had built, leaving room for the man he might have been. Sarah's journey was harder to watch. She avoided jail time but received 2 years of probation and mandatory therapy twice a week. The court ordered full restitution for the credit fraud, which meant selling everything: the house, the cars, even her jewelry. She moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a working-class neighborhood and took a job at a department store, the kind of place she'd once shopped with platinum cards. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Sarah's therapist, Dr. Martinez, was brilliant at breaking down the walls of delusion and privilege. Month by month, I received reports through Michael of his mother's genuine transformation. She started attending support groups for adult children of narcissists, finally recognizing how the Whitman family's toxic dynamics had shaped her values. She volunteered at a literacy center, teaching reading to adults who'd never had the opportunities she'd squandered. 2 years into her probation, she wrote me a letter, not asking for money or forgiveness, just sharing her journey. I'll include part of it here because it shows the daughter I'd always hoped existed beneath the society facade. Dear Mom, I wake up at 5 a.m. for my shift, and sometimes I catch the sunrise over the city. It's beautiful in a way I never noticed when I was racing to yoga in my Mercedes. I think about you during those sunrises, about all the mornings you woke early to grade papers and make my lunch. Dr. Martinez says I created a fantasy where I was the hero of a rags to riches story, but I cast you as the rags I needed to leave behind. The truth is, you were always the riches. Your love, your dedication, your integrity, those were the treasures I traded for costume, jewelry, and false friends. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I know I burned those bridges so thoroughly that even the ashes have scattered. I just wanted you to know that I finally see you, the real you, and I'm sorrier than words can ever express. I read that letter sitting on my beach in Hawaii, tears streaming down my face. Arthur held me as I grieved for the years we'd lost and felt cautious hope for what might still be possible. Michael flourished in my care, graduating valedictorian and earning a full scholarship to Stanford. He's in his junior year now, majoring in social justice law with a minor in financial ethics. He spent last summer interning at a nonprofit that helps elderly people protect their assets from predatory relatives. The irony isn't lost on any of us. "I want to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else," he told me during his last visit, "and maybe help families heal before they hit the point of no return." Madison joined us a year after Michael, quieter and more damaged by her parents' neglect. Therapy helped, as did the stability of regular meals, consistent rules, and unconditional love. She's at UCLA now studying psychology with plans to work with children from disrupted families. Both kids changed their last names to Morrison, a choice that moved me beyond words. The surprise blessing came from Helen. Our relationship, built on honesty for the first time in our lives, became the sisterhood we'd never had. She moved to Hawaii 3 years ago, buying a small condo near mine. We have coffee every morning, take walks on the beach, and laugh about things that once would have driven wedges between us. Honesty, it turns out, is the soil where real relationships grow. The Morrison Foundation has expanded beyond my wildest dreams. What started as a scholarship fund now includes small business grants, elder protection services, and family reconciliation counseling. Amy, my first recipient, joined the board after completing her doctorate. She brings the perspective of someone who understands that sometimes chosen family is the strongest family of all. The beach house in California did become a teacher's retreat as planned. Every summer, 20 educators spend a week there, all expenses paid, remembering why they chose a profession that society undervalues but civilization depends upon. The waiting list is 3 years long. But the most extraordinary development came last year. Sarah, having completed her probation and therapy, reached out through Michael. Not to me directly, she understood those boundaries, but to ask if she could volunteer at the Foundation's Family Reconciliation Program. She wanted to share her story, help other adult children recognize toxic patterns before they destroyed their families for false promises. After much deliberation and consultation with the board, we agreed to a trial program. Sarah now leads monthly workshops called "When Money Matters More: Breaking the Cycle of Financial Exploitation in Families." She's painfully honest about her choices, using her story as a cautionary tale. The workshops are always full. Last month, something remarkable happened. Sarah was presenting when a woman in the audience started crying. Through tears, the woman explained that she'd been planning to contest her mother's will, convinced she deserved more than her siblings. Sarah's story made her realize she was about to destroy her family over money that wouldn't buy what she really wanted: her mother's love and approval while she was still alive. Sarah called Michael that night, sobbing with a mix of grief and joy. "I saved someone, Michael. I actually saved a family from becoming us." Bradley, scheduled for release next year, has corresponded with both children. His letters show genuine remorse and a determination to rebuild his life without the crutches of privilege and addiction. He's earned an associate degree in addiction counseling and plans to work with other men who've lost everything to substance abuse and poor choices. Last week, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I invited Sarah to Hawaii for Madison's 21st birthday. Not to my home, those boundaries remain, but to neutral ground at a restaurant where we could all gather as something resembling a family. She arrived looking older, but somehow younger too, the hardness replaced by genuine humility. She brought Madison a gift she'd saved 6 months to afford: a simple gold necklace with a compass charm. "So you always find your way," Sarah told her daughter, "even when your parents lose theirs." The dinner was awkward at times, beautiful at others. We weren't the Hallmark movie family reunion, but we were something more honest. Broken people choosing to heal in proximity to each other, respecting the scars while celebrating the growth. As I write this conclusion, Michael just texted that he's been accepted to Harvard Law School. Madison sent photos from her volunteer work at a youth shelter. Helen is in my kitchen making her famous banana bread. Arthur is humming off-key, and I've never loved him more. The money I won in that lottery was life-changing, but not in the way I expected. It didn't buy me a family. It revealed the family I already had and freed me to find the family I deserved. It stripped away illusions and exposed truth, painful and beautiful in equal measure. To those of you watching who've been betrayed by family, who've been told you're not enough, who've been erased from narratives you helped write, know this: your worth isn't determined by those who can't see it. Build your life on the foundation of your own integrity. Create success that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. And when those who discarded you come calling, remember that forgiveness and foolishness aren't the same thing. Set boundaries in steel, but keep your heart soft enough to recognize genuine change. Not everyone will change. Some people are too invested in their own narratives to see reality, but some will surprise you. Some will do the hard work of transformation and emerge as people worth knowing again, even if the relationship looks nothing like what you once dreamed. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference transformed into grace. I'm no longer indifferent to Sarah because she's no longer the woman who declared me dead for sympathy points. She's someone who faced her worst self and chose to become better. That deserves recognition even if it doesn't erase the past. My 75th birthday is next month. We're having a small gathering. Just family, both blood and chosen. Sarah will be there not as the guest of honor she once would have demanded to be, but as someone grateful for a place at the table. Bradley will attend via video call from a halfway house, sharing in the celebration of a family that survived its own destruction. The tide is coming in now, washing the beach clean for tomorrow's footprints. That's what life offers us. Constant chances to begin again, to write new stories on fresh sand. Some of us need more dramatic erasures than others, but the opportunity remains for anyone brave enough to pick up the pen. Thank you for joining me on this journey from abandonment to abundance, from rejection to redemption. If my story teaches anything, let it be this: you are never too old to bloom, never too betrayed to trust again, never too broken to build something beautiful. But you must choose your materials wisely and never again settle for less than you deserve. Before I go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family who only valued you for what you could provide? How did you find the strength to choose yourself while still leaving room for grace? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own worth, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need this reminder. True family shows up for more than just paychecks, and the best revenge against those who dimmed your light is to shine so brightly that you illuminate the path for others. Consider subscribing for more stories of triumph over betrayal and the complicated journey of family relationships. Your support helps me share these important messages about self-worth boundaries and the power of choosing your own family. Thank you for reading, and remember, your story isn't over. The next chapter is always waiting to be written, and you hold the pen. Write something beautiful. With love and ocean breezes from Hawaii, Pam Morrison.